Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft, and today I'm going to show you what I think is probably the easiest and most atmospheric ways of drawing or painting a black cat using black velour, black and white pastels and our own Leon as the model. We're going to be using black velour paper and just white and black pastels. The black pastel is going to be important for reasons you'll see later on. To begin with, to get the image on the black velour, we need to use a white pastel. Obviously, you can't use a black pastel for that. So what I've done is I've taken the original photograph here. We're just using Photoshop, translated that into kind of pale line drawing. If you order the kit, the materials kit, details will be shown later on, you'll get this reverse image. And it's important to use a reverse image with the kit. So to save you having to bother about using trace down paper or anything like that, you can do this very economically by just printing a reverse image of the full photo or an outline on a sheet of A4 plain paper. And what I'm going to do, what I have done already, you might not be able to see this clearly on the screen, but I've taken a white pastel and just basically gone over all of the shapes that I want, the eyes, nose, mouth and a bit of the outline, so I can get the proportions down quickly. And of course if you're doing this freehand you don't have to worry about this at all. So the next step, once that's done, is to remove your plain sheet of paper and then position it face down where you want it on the velour. So about here. Should do it, and I'll just put another little piece of masking tape on the bottom to anchor it. And quite simply, all you have to do then, if you've done this with a white pastel, it'll come off very easily, is just hold your board steady, hold your paper down in place. So I'm using my thumb here just to make sure it doesn't move, and then gently wipe that over with a bit of scrunched up paper towel, and that should get you a nice image to start your process on the velour. So that's our little look. I'm just going to peel that off and lift it to make sure it's coming through. Don't move it until you're happy everything's come through. You can press a little bit more if it hasn't. Paying particular attention of course to the position, shape of the eyes, nose and mouth. Just lift that. Yep, everything's come through. Now with white pastel on velour, you'll find that that's very fragile. So if I rub that with my finger, you can see it's coming off very easily. That's because it's quite loose. So what I need to do then is, again using a white pastel to start with, is to go over some of those lines I want a little bit more carefully, a more careful sketch if you like, and then give it a rub, and where I press a little bit harder with the corner of the white pastel, it will stay. Pastel will stay in place. It will be a little bit faint to start with, but don't worry about that because we can build up those highlights and everything later on. So let's start with this eye, and if I just go over the outlines that I want using the corner of a hard white pastel. And again, you don't have to worry about ultra fine details at this stage. You can improve the details later on, even if you go over the edge a little bit with your pastel, but you shouldn't. Don't worry about it. Because if we can't rub it down, then we can use the black pastel as like an eraser. And you'll see that in action a little bit later. So just a rough sketch to begin with. Now if I rub that, you can see that the loose pastel from the initial tracing, if you like, has gone, and the harder sketch using the corner of the white pastel stays in place. So I'm going around the pupils. I'm just going to bring that pupil on the left in a little bit to match the one on the right. On the original photograph it's a little bit rounder because that side of Leon's face is in shadow, so the pupil looks larger. And where it's in the light on the right hand side, then of course the pupil is smaller, narrower. Here's the coloured part of the eye. I'm just going to loosely sketch that in for now. worry about fine edges or anything like that at this stage. We can refine it much later on. Again, if I give that little rub, you'll see that the loose pastel is gone, the hard pastel remains. So all I need to do now is sketch in the other bits. This is the highlight on the lower rim. And highlight on the lower rim there is about here. We don't need to rub all that as we go, we can rub it all out later on, of course. So let's get the shape of the nose in. A little dip in the nose there. This is the highlight on the nose, of course. Going down to the central point out here, and that's the cleft between the lips. Now Leon has a distinction of having, a lighter or white cheek on that side, and on this side it's black. Now, of course, this technique you can use with any photograph you've got, if you're painting a black cat, or indeed if you're painting any other cat or any other subject. Just get your photograph printed in reverse. You can flip it on the computer and go over it with either white pastel if you're working on black velour. You can use a black pastel if you're working on sand or grey velour, and it really does save quite a bit of expense on buying trace down paper. So that's the basic outline of his head. Now we've got a highlight shape on his cheek here, so I'm just going to sketch that in again. Going down to the nose, so that's kind of the nose itself is here, then the highlight part on the cheek. I'm just going to loosely sketch that in for now. Again, all of this is very loose to begin with, just so we get the tonal shapes really. So this is all going to be a sort of pale grey in the end. Give that a little rub. And the highlight on his actual nose, with the light's catching it. The light's coming from the right hand side, of course, so anything towards the right hand side will be highlighted. As I said already, this is a very good way, I think, of drawing or painting a black cat using a black surface. For no other reason than it saves you having to use all of that black to paint the black fur. The black fur is already there. Plus, I think it looks a lot more atmospheric using white on black. You're going to get some really good impact highlights. So he has a white bib, being a tuxedo cat. This is the edge, roughly the edge of his white bib, disappearing into the shadow on the left hand side. I'm going to use the flat of the pastel to begin to get all this white bib here. Again, don't try to get your full whites or your full highlights in at this stage. Especially with black velour, you have to build up those tones bit by bit. So each light layer you do comes out sort of pale grey, but then once you rub it in and that pastel is trapped in the fibres, then it gives you a little more of a firmer bed to build on. So bit by bit you can build up to those final dramatic highlights. So there's my tonal shapes. I'm just going to put a little bit suggestion of a highlight on his eyebrow on that side. Notice I'm not worried about whiskers or anything at this point. I'll put those on right at the end with a nice sharp corner of the pastel. So I always like to keep one end with sharp corners for such things like whiskers and so on. The other end is a lot more rounded for softer tonal values. So again, building on that now, we'll add a little bit more of a highlight to the side of his head and side of his face. And the light's catching it. And again, don't worry if you make a little mistake at this point, because you can erase that with a black pastel. And a little bit more highlight on his bib. again, those sort of furry highlights around the edge of his bib we can put in later. It's already just building up those light layers. It's going to enable us to bring the tone up bit by bit. So just a little bit more on the edge of his nose, I think. So once all that's rubbed in really well, don't worry about fingerprints either, because we can get rid of those later. Once all that's rubbed in really well, the pastel is now settled into the fibres, we can start building upon the details. So second stage is again just to use the slightly rounded corner of your pastel and refine the sketch a little bit. So we'll refine the shape of the pupil around the edge of the eye. And again, I'll explain about the highlights and reflections in a little while. But all we want to do is get a sort of basic pale grey iris. If you wanted to be a little bit more experimental, you could actually put a colour over that, you know, nice soft green or something if you wanted to. But this is going to remain a monochrome atmospheric pastel sketch. And the other eye over here. So again, we're aiming for a sort of mid-grey iris. Don't worry about those edges. You can tidy those up, remember. And again, a little rub. So you are going to get sort of blurred edges when you rub them, but the thing is, don't panic. Don't worry about it. Highlight on the lower rim, and highlight on the tip of the nose, just at the top of the nose there, where the fur meets the fleshy part. And we want to maintain this highlight on the right hand side, a sort of darkish grey. Remember, this is a highlight on the black fur, so we don't want to make it too bright. Just have that little highlight going around the nose, into the cheek, and then we can put some fur texture on after that. So the highlight on the cheek on the left hand side, not quite as strong. That's on the shadow side, remember. And then we'll strengthen the white on the white part of his cheek. So it kind of split there, white cheek and black cheek. Then that's the edge of his cheek disappearing into the shadow there. Just give it a little rub, and then we'll go back to the side of the face again with a rounded corner. The light, imagine the light is picking up that edge of his face, maybe slightly shining behind it. Okay, we'll let that disappear up there. Always rub between the layers. We don't need to rub it in forcefully at this point. We just need to give it a good firm rub so it stays in place. Then another layer onto the white bib. This time we'll begin to get that slightly whiskered edge to his bib. What I tend to do in areas like this is work from the outside in. So we've got the outside edge, and we want to continue backfilling from there. So what we do by doing that is we cover all of the pastel starting marks. So if I make a mark like that, you don't want to see where it starts, you want to see where it ends. So by backfilling from the outer edge, we can cover all of those starting points of the pastel. Once we've got a nice fairy edge, then we can backfill with the flat of the pastel to save a little bit of time. So turning to the flat side of the pastel now, Just backfill. Again, don't worry about those edges around here. Those are going to be tidied up very soon. Let that fade away into the shadow. Again, give it all a good rub and build on it as required. So the more light layers you do, the more you're able to get on. If you go in too heavy too soon with your white pastel, you're going to clog the fibres, it's going to be a little bit harsh, and you're not going to be able to control those tones. So only the edge of this will be highlighted. The rest is going to be semi-shadow, if you like. So those are my main tones for now, and the sketch is a little bit tidier. Maybe just put a tiny bit on the eyebrow on the other side, just a little bit of tone. Now we can start to tidy it up even more. This is where your hard black pastel comes in handy. What this does is it sharpens your outlines, it tidies up any bits in the background you don't want, so like fingerprints and so on. We'll get back to that. But initially, we can use that to tidy up our outline. We've got this white line there, which obviously we don't want. So, using the rounded corner of the black pastel, you can then go over that and then push that pupil right into the shadow above or below the eyelid. So that line's completely gone now. And then we can shape the pupil how we want it. Nice and clean. And the outer part of the eye, which is in fact the lower rim, that gives a nice clean edge to the eyeball itself. You can see it's much sharper than the eye on the left now. And again, with the lower rim highlight, a little bit of shadow underneath there, and then also of course we can use the corner to put in a little bit of fur texture on that sort of pale grey we've got, and let that fade back into the dark cheek. So a little bit of texture there, give it a little stroke, and then we can fade that back, get rid of that hard line of the cheek where we started. Also, any little bits of sort of pastel dust created by your fingers and so on, it gets rid of those as well. So drag that back over there. The eyebrow, again, just fade it away. Just put a little subtle highlight in the middle perhaps. And that gives us a little bit of visible texture in the eyebrow as well. Okay, so we work down to the nose. A little bit of a dip just above the nose. Put that in. Nose itself, of course, is black in this case, and we want that left-hand side to fade out a little bit. And just keep the right-hand side as highlighted. That's coming down into his cheeks. So you can see you can easily cover up anything you don't want. Okay, so there's a huge difference now between that side and that side. This side is much sharper. So repeat the process over here. So we want a nice shadow underneath the eyelid. Get rid of that white line. A little bit of texture in the eyebrow. Of course, push the pupil right up under that eyelid. We don't see a line. Now the line of the eye again, going down to the lower rim. Everything is nice and sharp now. And that shine on the lower rim. Shadow underneath. A little bit of texture on the cheek. And then I'm going to use the flat of the black pastel just to push that away a little bit more. And again, this line here I don't want, I can push that away. Tiny bit more. We can get a nice crisp edge to the fur on his bib. All these fingerprints I've got from using the white pastel can now go. Using the flat of the black pastel, you see it just covers those up nicely. Give them a rub. Everything's nice and clean now. And then we're ready for our final highlights. So the final highlights include whiskers, highlights in the eyes and so on. We'll start with the eyes. So highlights coming from the top right. What we're going to have here is a little highlight on the iris on the opposite side. So here's the line of the light. So just here you'll have a soft highlight on the iris. If this was a green eye, that would be a pale green. And the same on the other side. Just a little soft highlight on the opposite side to your light source. And then the light shining on the eye is going to have a crisper reflection. So we can put that in. Even if it's not on your photograph, you can always add that in as long as it's on the same side as the light. And a little bit on there as well. Maybe not too much on there because the eye is almost shadowed. Shiny highlight on the lower rim, both sides, and then just a touch on the nose, I think, and edge of the face. This is using the rounded corner still. The sharp corner is going to be reserved for the whiskers. The edge of his cheek. More on the white side of his cheek. And then going back to the edge of his bib before we do the whiskers. Nice sort of crisp edge with the lights just shining through it, just on the right hand portion. We don't need to make it stark white all the way. Give that little rub. Now we're ready for the whiskers. So I'm using a sharp corner, which I've saved on the pastel, a hard sharp corner. We'll get the eye whiskers in first. Now the trick is when you're doing the whiskers, eye whiskers or cheek whiskers, put them in like that first. If you need to lengthen it, you can lengthen it. But then what we don't want to see is the starting mark of the pastel. So the whisker wants to look like it's coming out of the fur. So we take the black pastel and gently go over the base. You see that sort of pushes them away gradually into the black fur. Gives the impression that they're growing out of rather than laid on top. And of course the final part in any cat is your cheek whiskers. So again, sketch them in lightly. Leon's got loads of whiskers, so try to get a nice curve on them. Press on a little bit when you start and lift off at the end. So that will give you a nice sort of thicker root of the whiskers and a nice sharp end. So again, put the whiskers in first. If you need to lengthen one or two, you can do that now. Always shorter and finer towards the front. You can always go over the base a little bit with the white pastel. Remember, we can tidy that up with the black pastel. So we'll put a few in there, a few on the left hand side. And then with your black pastel, just tidy up the roots. Bury the roots into the side of the face. Again, gives you that impression that they're growing out of the face rather than just laid on top. Give that a little rub, and we can call that one finished for today, I think. So we'll sign it off. There's Leon, quite an atmospheric, almost dramatic portrait, I think you'll agree. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more videos, free online tutorials, and if you want to order the workshop set for this, the details will be coming up at the end of the video. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.